Back in the studio, a lot of travel, quick turnaround, ready to talk 49ers. We've got a big show waiting. I'm going to talk free agents. I'm going to talk potential draftees. This is going to lead up to the Senior Bowl, which is going to be played today to wrap up the week in Mobile, Alabama. So make sure you tune into that on NFL Network because you'll see some intriguing prospects. And the 49ers have loved the Senior Bowl over the years. Debo Samuel, Dre Greenlaw. Those are players of the 49ers very likely drafted because of the impression that they made during the Senior Bowl. Remember, Samuel and Greenlaw were in the same draft class, 2019. That's when the 49ers coaching staff had one of the teams at the Senior Bowl because they weren't good in 2018. So when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl in Miami the following year, after winning the NFC Championship game to punch their ticket, I still remember Robert Saleh wearing the shirt in the locker room. It said, "From Mobile to Miami." And two guys who really helped the 49ers go from Mobile to Miami, Debo Samuel and Dre Greenlaw, both prospects in that 2019 class at that Senior Bowl in that 2019 winter. January, turning the calendar to February 2019, 49ers coaching staff was coming off a 4-12 season. A lot of coaching staffs consider the Senior Bowl to be extra work. Let the scouting department do that, but the NFL will sometimes pick you. If you had a bad season, you're eligible to be picked, and the 49ers put their heads down and went to work. They didn't just go home or go to Cabo right away. And in January of 2019, the staff, Shanahan, everybody went to Mobile, coached the Senior Bowl, discovered Debo Samuel, really discovered what they truly loved about Debo Samuel. Dre Greenlaw was another name, drafted both of those players, and the rest was history. That draft class was a spearhead for San Francisco, really turning around its fortunes under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. So anyway, we're going to go through this entire projection. I've got, how about these illustrations, by the way, up on the San Francisco Standard? This is awesome stuff. This is the State of the 49ers piece. That's Nick Bosa. This is the D-line State of the 49ers piece. That's obviously Nick Bosa. I want to make this a little bit wider so you guys can see the full illustration in all of its glory. That's the D-line piece. That is the O-line piece. So far, I've done O-line and D-line. I'm going to go through all 8 position groups of the 49ers over the course of the next couple of weeks before another NFL event, the NFL Combine, that's going to be in Indianapolis. So that is that. This is this. This is our 49ers 2025 projected roster. The free agency cycle is going to come first, followed by the draft cycle after that. A lot of folks have been wanting to talk about T. Higgins, who's scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent currently with the Cincinnati Bengals. So we'll talk about T. Higgins. I think one of those rumor accounts decided to put that out there, based it on sources that probably don't exist. But it's still worth talking about because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, and it is an exercise in roster building to be able to talk not only about this. So on the offensive side of the ball, the 49ers, according to my projection, and those of you who are unfamiliar with the projection, this is a 90-man depth chart, but they're going to have to cut it down to 53 men by the end of training camp. So anybody who I project at this moment to make the 49ers 53-man roster is on the left side of this bold dividing line, and players who I currently don't project to make that, but they can remain in the building on the practice squad. And obviously this is really early. Those guys are on the right side. So it tallies up how many players have qualified for the 53-man roster. Right now I have 39 out of 53 spots taken. So what that means is that, just rough estimate, in general, the 49ers have 14 spots left on the 53-man roster. Now they could obviously unseat players. They can say, hey, we've improved our roster so much that some of the guys that I currently project, they're not going to make the team. I mean, somebody like Kalia Davis, Evan Anderson, Sam Okawanu. I mean, these guys are going to have to fight to keep their roster spots if the 49ers have a prolific offseason, especially at the defensive line. But if we're just looking at this right now from the bird's eye view, how are the 49ers constructing this roster? 14 spots, ballpark number, hit or miss. So you go out and you sign your free agents. A typical free agent class for a team that already has a loaded roster might only be 4 or 5 names. You go out and draft players, and the 49ers have 10 draft picks. So that's right away 15 players, maybe a little bit more on the free agency front. But as far as bigger names, it could only be like 2 or 3. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long list of big names. But I do have ideas for the 49ers, and I do have some data to support it. I might even have some intel to support who they're going to go after, and we want to fit it within this projection right here. Anyway, let's talk about T. Higgins first, because the 49ers have never really had a big star receiver, like as far as 6'4" height goes, and that's T. Higgins is that, and he has been that for Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. He's 6'4", he's about 220, and despite the fact that he's been a bit overshadowed by Jamar Chase in that receiving room, it's obviously been a prolific set of weapons for Joe Burrow. And before I move on, yes, Joe Burrow has had a prolific set of weapons. It's not illegal for a quarterback to have weapons. Funny, some people on the internet would make you think that it's not allowed in the NFL. And in fact, it's something that's encouraged by those who know the game and want to build a strong roster and maximize production. So T. Higgins has been one of Joe Burrow's weapons. He played on the franchise tag this past season. He's scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. He will not come cheap. He's definitely going to be a player that's going to cost over $20 million. The franchise tag itself for T. Higgins this past season cost $21 million. He's going to be 26 years old. He's been targeted over 108 times in 4 of his 5 seasons, including this past one where he played only 12 games. So some injury concerns for T. Higgins. He played 12 games in 2024, only 12 in 2023. First 3 seasons, a little bit more available, 16, 14, and 16 games for Higgins. But it was only 2023 where he was not targeted at least 108 times. So Joe Burrow has really, really liked him in Cincinnati. He's attained at least 900 receiving yards in 4 of those 5 seasons, with 2023 being the season where he didn't. 656 yards, 42 catches on 76 targets. So when I watch the Bengals, T. Higgins is an awesome contested catch guy. The highlight reel is long with him. He's not quite the separator that Jamar Chase is. He's not the pure A-plus list receiver that Jamar Chase is. But when you go 908 yards as a rookie, 1,091 your second year, 1,029 your third year, obviously down to 656 his fourth year, and then 911 in 12 games your fifth year, you're pretty damn close to A-list talent. So I think that T. Higgins deserves a lot of respect, and he's going to get that respect financially this offseason. When you talk about what the 49ers might need, well, it's hard to envision them being able to fit T. Higgins with Debo Samuel still on the roster. Just from a financial construction standpoint, and they don't actually stand to save all too much money this offseason if they part ways with Debo Samuel, because most of the money that's been paid to Debo has come in the form of signing bonuses and restructures that have to do with signing bonuses. So they got to pay all that dead money for Debo anyway. It's only a matter of saving a few million if you let go of Debo Samuel. So financially, if you're talking about allocating certain amounts of cash, like 20, 25 cap cash to the receiver room, you're not saving a tangible amount, especially in relation to the addition of a potential addition of somebody like T. Higgins. You're not saving a tangible amount to take a bite out of that, to really create some kind of financial cushion. I think the 49ers plan has been clear since last offseason at receiver. Pay Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, they did that. He's still listed in injury shading here, which is why I don't have him as the starter. But you look at Ayuk as your X once he does get healthy, coming back from the torn ACL. There's a reason they paid him $30 million per year. So you pay Ayuk, you develop Ricky Pearsall, which is happening at a rapid rate. The fact that Ricky got shot in the chest last year, on top of the injury issues that he was dealing with entering training camp and during training camp, the fact that he was able to bounce back from that to deliver the type of finish in his rookie season, given Kyle Shanahan's crazy big playbook, complicated playbook, especially for receivers. What we saw from Ricky last year, I think, has to make the 49ers feel good about their cost-controlled approach at receiver. Now, whether or not Debo Samuel is with them for the long term, I don't think changes how they feel about Brandon Ayuk, who they paid $30 million a year, changes how they feel about Ricky Pearsall, who they invested that first-round draft pick in, and it definitely doesn't change how they feel about Jawan Jennings, who is maybe the best bargain in football right now. What is it, $8 million a year for Jawan Jennings? Near the tops of the league in yards per route run last year. I mean, you've got some dudes here. Maybe even add somebody else through the NFL draft, although I think that they also like the progress that Jacob Cowing made. So Debo is on the lame duck year of his contract, and I don't think that he is like the ultimate fit with Brock Purdy's style. I think that Debo, especially in his prime, was an ideal receiver given what they're running with Jimmy Garoppolo. They were the short game was Jimmy's strength. The intermediate crossers were one of Jimmy's strengths. Debo Samuel paired really, really well with that, and we saw him deliver his best year in 2021 with Jimmy. As he is an excellent weapon, right, when he's healthy, and I think that Debo was dealing with a lot last year, including the pneumonia that hospitalized him. But when we look at Purdy's style of play, there's a lot more improvisation behind the line of scrimmage. He's throwing deep more often. He loves to wear out the intermediate part of the field, and I think people have this actually wrong about Debo Samuel. I think Debo is good on those in-breaking routes. I'm not saying that Debo Samuel is a master separator and a prototypical X-wide receiver. He doesn't play that position, and no, separation is not his strong suit, but he can run a good in-breaking route, and the reason that you take advantage of the middle of the field as much as you possibly can, at least high up on that list of the reasons, is that the sideline is not there to tackle your receiver. It sets up yak. So when Debo's been at his best, and I think back to 2019 when he was a rookie and I first was introduced to Debo Samuel's style of play, there was a game that the 49ers beat the Packers in. Sunday Night Football. I think the final score was 37-8, and it was just awesome. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo before halftime hit Debo Samuel on a crosser, and people see Debo Samuel like this guy's built like a brick. I mean, it's a bulldozer, right? But his straight line speed has not left him yet. I could tell you that through the kick returns that he had this year. But his straight line speed has always featured an extra gear that has taken safeties by surprise, that has taken corners by surprise. So when they hit him on this crosser, the little inbreaker against the Packers, and he just took it to the pylon untouched, he scored probably, a 40, 50-yard touchdown in that game. Ever since then, time and time again, I've seen Debo Samuel outrun people. And again, I saw a couple kick returns this year where he was outrunning people. So we can't go out and just typecast Debo Samuel as somebody who can only catch little screen passes. And if you're starting to run a more robust intermediate to deep attack, there's no reason to have him on the football team. That's just not the case. He does have game-changing speed. Now, he's not the same type of fit that he was with Jimmy Garoppolo as he is with Brock Purdy. I absolutely get it. The 49ers, especially this past season, struggled with separation. I think I have an idea of why they struggled with separation, because they're missing two of their best separators in Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. That does a big impact from the running back position. They ranked last in average separation at the time of the catch. So you automatically say, hey, well, don't they need more separators? Yes, they need the guys that are already on the roster to be healthy. And no, I don't think that Debo Samuel was a particularly effective player this past year when it was basically a square peg forced into a round hole. The guy who's not a top-tier separator, but forced to play in the roles of a top-tier separator. If you can build a healthy receiving room, and I know a lot of this has to do with luck over the course of the season, but if you can build a healthy receiving room around around Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and Jennings and Pearsall, then Debo Samuel can be that added weapon, that hammer, the bulldozer, whatever you want to call him. He can be that added weapon that is truly effective and truly raises the ceiling of this offense. I don't think that you have to jettison him just to get another admittedly excellent receiver in T. Higgins, and something that would be probably $20 million more expensive for the 49ers this year, because you're not going to be saving a whole lot by jettisoning Debo Samuel. So T. Higgins would be extremely expensive relative to that for the 49ers. I do not think that is the most stable, suitable financial play for San Francisco, especially since you're dealing with a name that's probably going to be in unrestricted free agency this offseason. So that's just my take on how they're going to construct the receiving room. I do think that they really believe that Mike is saying Higgins is going to get 30 for sure. I'm talking about cap hit. And even if you signed him to $3 million and you kept the cap hit lower, you're going to have to deal with cap hits averaging something in the 20s over the first couple of years. And when you look at what Debo Samuel would cost San Francisco, even if they cut him, even if they traded him, you're still going to be adding probably $20 million of cap burden in 2025 through that entire transaction. So it wouldn't be very financially feasible for the 49ers. I will circle back to health for San Francisco. If this receiving room is healthy or healthier than it was in 2024, you are not seeing dead last in the NFL in average yards of separation at the time of completion. You're not seeing statistics that were horrific when it came to separation. The efficiency of Brock Purdy this year, he was fine against zone coverage, still in the top 10 against zone coverage. It was the man coverage that the 49ers couldn't beat. So that's not the quarterback's fault. It's the receiving room. The receiving room, they've got to get open. And then we could talk about the offensive line and the interplay there. But, when I did write up in the San Francisco Standard about the offensive line, I think a lot of people, and this is going to be a natural segue to our next discussion about a rookie, Gray Zabel. I think a lot of people are not really evaluating the offensive line properly. From the very start of this big O-line discussion, I take it back to 2019. 2019, the 49ers went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Chiefs. There were pass protection issues against Kansas City. Frank Clark, Chris Jones, both of those guys took over the game in the fourth quarter. The 49ers had the number 26 ranked offensive line when it came to pass block win rate against the whole league. But that's what they had to deal with when they're facing the Kansas City Chiefs and Chris Jones and Frank Clark. So the first thing I said is, hey, the 49ers have to fix this offensive line. They have to fix the pass protection. I get that they can run block well, but you're not going to win a Super Bowl at number 26 in pass block win rate. 2020, they thought they were going to get Weston Richburg, the center back who got hurt in 2019. That was part of the number 26. They didn't get him back. He actually eventually retired. They also lost their backup center, Ben Garland. They also lost their third-string center that year. I think Daniel Brunskill was one of the emergency centers. But there was a time that season when they got to their fifth-string center, Hronis Grasu. Anyway, 2020 was an absolute disaster for the 49ers pass protection, especially on the interior. So that brought us to 2021. And this is all from the piece that I just showed you, fixing Brock Purdy's offensive line with one big investment. Just giving you guys a nice little background piece here. You see 2019 pass block win rate number 26. 2020 pass block win rate actually technically got a little bit better, but their pass blocking efficiency got worse. One is a PFF measure. The other one is an ESPN measure. Basically, red is bad, blue is good. The pass protection was a massive issue leaving 2020. I still remember Seattle repeatedly blowing up the 49ers in the A gap in that game. I think it was a week 8 game over in Seattle. Was not good for the 49ers. So anyway, have a look now at what happened in 2021 and 2022. You see in 21, the 49ers finally cracked the top half of the league. In 22, they actually raised the pass blocking efficiency to the top 10. Now, I get it that win rate and efficiency are different. It's really tough to, I think, measure things like pass protection in the NFL because there is a lot of chaos, which is why I take it from multiple places. And then in this very same article, I'm going to come back to this. I talk about the offensive linemen player by player because I think that you've got certain guys who perform better and certain guys who perform worse. So I think it's really, really imperative to take the microscope out and look at each position after you do look at the overall offensive line. But what happened in 21 and 22 is that the 49ers got better in pass protection, undoubtedly got better in pass protection, right? Especially over 2019 and 2020. Then they took a step back in 23, and where a lot of people get this wrong is that 2024 actually was better than 2023 in pass protection. It wasn't great, but it was better. The main problems for the 49ers offense this past season came in the separation department. Play calling, separation, I get those two are intertwined. Play calling relies on receiver talent to separate, but receiver talent also relies on play calling to generate space on the field. I mean, it's got to be a good play. There has to be good spacing. All of that is intertwined. And every single bit of data from the dead last finish and average yards per separation to the the drop numbers weren't good for the 49ers either, but to the man versus zone splits with man coverage being a lot worse for the 49ers offense than zone coverage. Every single piece of data leads us back to separation was the biggest issue, including the fact that the offensive line was better in 2024. Now, despite the fact that they're better on the aggregate, there were still major problems, which is why on the standard I went here. And I showed, look at the red. This the top above the horizontal dividing line. These are the starters. Pass block percentile. So anything above 50 is above average, below 50 is under average. The entire interior line was below average in terms of pass protection. Even Dominic Puni, who really good rookie year. I'm not taking anything away from Dominic Puni's rookie year. In fact, in the metric that I'm showing you right here, Dominic Puni was well above 50% up until like the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. So he hit a rookie wall. He was still an awesome run blocker. Dominic Puni is great. Dominic Puni is going to be a cornerstone, a fixture for this 49ers offensive line. But I do not think that Jake Brendel or Aaron Banks will be cornerstones or fixtures for this 49ers offensive line moving forward. Maybe they keep Jake Brendel through his contract, which is one more year to work with a center. And that one center might be a guy named, I'll put his name here at the bottom, Gray Zabel. We are seeing a tremendous skyrocketing of stock for Gray Zabel. In fact, this is from Dane Brugler coming out of the Senior Bowl. Dane wrote this about Gray Zabel. This is from Jim Nagy, who runs the Senior Bowl, said Gray Zabel was named the Senior Bowl overall practice player of the week in a poll of NFL executives from all 32 teams. We got a great picture here from Senior Bowl practices. Let's get Gray up on the screen. Give him some love for being the Senior Bowl practice player of the week. Where's my roster? We got too many windows open, guys. Way too many windows open. Oh, I have it right here. I had the right window open already. It was right in front of me. There it is. Gray Zabel working at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, the center. North Dakota State has a tradition of developing really, really solid offensive linemen, especially recently. Anyway, Zabel has played during college every single position. Literally every single offensive line position he's played, which I think is imperative for a good center in today's day and age. Not only a good center, but a lineman who you add as a rookie who won't necessarily start right away. I don't know if the 49ers added Zabel. I don't know exactly what the permutations of the offensive line would be. But if especially if he's not starting right away, experience at all the spots are necessary, because when we look at rosters, look at the offensive line for the 49ers, I only have – they're going to be more on this projection once they finalize the 53. But I currently only have 7 on the 53, and there may only be 8 by the time the cut down day happens. So just due to the limited numbers associated with a 53-man NFL roster, you have to find guys who are versatile to be in that second string. You have to have versatility, because if Spencer Burford goes down, just in this hypothetical scenario, Brendel, Purdy, a lot of guys go down. Well, Nick Zakel can't only be trained for one position. He's maybe have to be ready to step in at center or tackle. And last year we saw that when Spencer Burford actually finished the season at left tackle for the 49ers. Anyway, Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State offensive lineman who played at so many different positions over his college career, has impressed so much at the Senior Bowl. You have to consider him, or somebody that is cut from his cloth, similar type of mold. You have to consider that a potential possibility for the 49ers. As Dane Brugler said, this is in response to Gray Zabel winning the Senior Bowl Practice Player of the Week. It wasn't really close. Zabel had a dominant week. He was already in the top 50 mix, but now he's knocking on the first round door. He is the top center in the draft. Let's go back to this. We talk about Zabel for Brock Purdy, a center for Brock Purdy. Let's go back to what I posted yesterday on Twitter. Drew Dalman. I've talked about Drew Dalman now. I feel like a lot of people have kind of hopped on this bandwagon over the course of the past few weeks, but we were talking about Drew Dalman late last season. I could even say I was talking about Drew Dalman. Here's proof. I was talking about Drew Dalman 4 years ago. This is my former employer, the Athletic. They treated me right over the years. We can show their article. So I wrote this for the Athletic in 2021, April 20th, 2021. So it's almost 4 years ago. The football education of NFL draft prospect Drew Dalman is filled with links to NFL history. So we talk about Gray Zabel. Now we could talk about Drew Dalman. I think we need to be broad here and emphasize center is going to be an important position, a vital position to shore up for Brock Purdy over the course of the next decade. Or fine, if you don't think Purdy's going to be around that long, the next half decade. The 49ers are about to financially commit to Brock Purdy for about a half decade. So how do you make sure that you best foster his chances of success? Go back to when this guy's dad, Drew Dalman's dad, was the center of the 49ers. It is cerebrally putting key responsibilities on the center's plate. That's while the center can also simultaneously physically execute what needs to be done. That is why center is such an important position, because it's taking two things. And Chris Dalman in this article was, because I talked to both Chris and Drew Dalman. And both of these guys illustrated really, really well, like how difficult it is to execute. I mean, it's more than two things, but to execute both general assignments of the center position. Where you're having to put your hand down by the football, so your head is 2-3 feet off the ground. And from there, you're having to scan the defense, see the safety rotation, essentially to determine, based on defensive leverage, which way the offense is going to slide its protection. And you're in doing that, you're taking a lot off the quarterback's plate, assuming that you do it correctly. So center is what I call the rising tide that can lift all boats of the offensive line. When we look at this right here, which is the 49ers O-line performance in 2024, the run blocking was actually okay on the right side. I think Colton McKivitz was the worst run blocker for the 49ers. It was the pass blocking in the middle that I think suffered the most. I do believe that if they can get center figured out the way that they did when Weston Richburg was healthy, the way that they did when they had Alex Mack for that 1 year before he retired, if you can get that figured out, I think you can raise the scores of the interior in pass blocking, and that could be the best way to support Brock Purdy. That's just my theory. I'm going to go out on a limb with that, but that's why I like talking about Gray Zabel. That's why I like talking about Drew Dalman. And Dalman would be the free agency addition for the 49ers that I think makes the most sense. I actually was texting Mike yesterday about Drew Dalman. This is a player who started his career as essentially the successor to Alex Mack. He was drafted in 2021 by the Falcons. Matt Hennessy, who happens to be on the 49ers roster, take a look at this. We go back to the center position right now. Matt Hennessy was the actual successor he was like a bridge between Alex Mack and Drew Dalman. 49ers picked him up off the Falcons practice squad. So obviously they love centers cut from the cloth of Alex Mack. But Matt Hennessy and Drew Dalman, once the torch was passed on, Dalman improved markedly over his time over the past 4 years with Atlanta as a pass protector. He was consistently a top 10 or even top 5 graded run blocker. This past season, Drew Dalman finished as the 8th graded pass protecting center. He was in the top 3 if you combine pass protection and run blocking grade. So this is a top 5 center whose dad played for the 49ers. His dad played under Bob McKittrick and then worked with Alex Gibbs in Atlanta, then Coach Drew, his son. Coached under Jim Harbaugh. I mean, there are such cool connections, right? It's just football is a small world. So when you look at a free agent, who you say the 49ers could really, really benefit, and it makes a whole lot of sense. Somebody who they're really interested in 2021, but the draft budget just didn't make much sense for it, and they had signed Alex Mack that season. It is Drew Dalman. I'll read a few more here. I've collected a little bit of a list what the 49ers might be able to do free agency-wise. DJ Jones, if you're looking to spruce up the defensive tackle position, which I think is another must for the 49ers. So I came out with the State of the 49ers D-line piece. It's this one. It's the Bosa piece. Look at where the D-line was last year. There's a lot of red on here. It's not good, guys. You need a lot more blue on the D-line piece. And look where some of the issues for the 49ers were. Interior defensive linemen are on the bottom half of this table, defensive tackles. Look at how much red there is there. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of red up on the edge rushing section too. But the 49ers did not have a single plus defender in terms of run defense. These are PFF run defense grades. Evan Anderson had the highest grade. It was still only a 59 for the 49ers. So when they last had DJ Jones and Eric Armstead together there in the middle, the 49ers were a lot better team in run defense, point blank. I think that's something to remember for a team that finished number 29 in run defense this season. So I look at DJ Jones. I look at Mason Graham, probably the best defensive tackle in this draft out of Michigan. This is one of the most talented and deep defensive line classes that we've seen in a while to come out of college. So if the 49ers want to refurbish this, which they absolutely have to, I think it's an even more pressing need on the aggregate than the offensive line, which was okay, not as dark red here on the top. The bottom, I mean, yeah, they need more depth on the offensive line. I get it. But if you're looking for more immediate improvements, larger splash improvements, immediately, the defensive line is the unit that can use them. I mean, again, there is a pitiful amount of blue here. And Nick, this guy right here, Nick Bosa, needs more support. So I look at Mason Graham. I look at a list of defensive tackles in free agency, and I see names like DJ Jones. Sebastian Joseph Day's on there. That's funny. 49ers legend, Sebastian Joseph Day. Javon Kinlaw, I've talked a lot about him. And you're not looking necessarily, if you're the 49ers, for A-list player after A-list player. It'd be great if you could add as many A-list players as possible. But when this is the situation that you're dealing with, you just want marginal improvement. And somebody like Javon Kinlaw would immediately improve the 49ers defensive line. And he followed Saleh to New York, and now Robert Saleh is back with the 49ers. Somebody like DJ Jones would immediately improve what you're seeing there from the 49ers defensive line. Greg Gaines, the former Ram, now the former Buccaneer, or soon to be former Buccaneer, he's on the list. Kevin Givens, scheduled to be a free agent. He's just been a rotational guy for the 49ers. It really is not a bad free agent class. BJ Hill at the very top of it, former Cincinnati Bengals. So you look at Mason Graham, who the 49ers probably would have to trade up for, but it wouldn't shock me if they did take a big swing and the NFL draft and or in free agency at the very interior. I mean, I could only talk about the problems of this 49ers defense for so long until it gets really old. And there were real problems for this 49ers defense. This was a unit that finished number 29 against the run. I mean, we talked about it so much when they hired Robert Saleh a few days ago, right? I had all those graphics ready about how this defense has just completely plummeted as far as production on the interior against the run goes. And the pass defense has actually held up decently well, but they're not controlling games anymore. Robert Saleh is going to need more talent on the interior. I could even go to Solomon Thomas, who played some defensive tackle for the Jets, and say he probably would shore some things up as far as the floor of this 49ers defense. It's not necessarily always about the ceiling. It's about the floor as well. We could talk about Mike Green while we're on the topic of the defensive line and the Senior Bowl. So the situation here with the Senior Bowl is that the 49ers didn't have their entire coaching staff there, but they had one guy, KJ Wright. And he just so happened to be coaching the national team's edge rushers. And one of the national team's edge rushers, as you'll see during the game today, is a player out of Marshall named Mike Green, who I did talk about from Paris. We'll actually play it right now. This was the final video that we made from Paris, talking about helping Nick Bosa and that defense. So here are my ideas. Here's some video. We had some really good content creators, reporters, Brad Graham, Steph Sanchez out there in Mobile talking about and covering the 49ers, KJ Wright, and what they might possibly be able to glean out of this Senior Bowl. Well, when it comes to edge rushers, I think Mike Green is one of those names. Here we go, talking about him.
Saleh is back, and the 49ers want to return to 2019 level defensive line dominance to help out this guy, find a bookend for this guy, Nick Bosa. State of the 49ers defensive line is up, and we're wrapping up our 49ers Paris tour, which means elite sandwiches to pair with talk of the 49ers defense returning to elite levels. You know, the Senior Bowl's happening right now. Just so happens that KJ Wright, the 49ers assistant linebackers coach, was a quality control coach under Johnny Holland this past season. Just so happens that he is coaching edge rushers for the national team. And one of his players was the sack leader in college football, Mike Green out of Marshall, and he is turning heads at the Senior Bowl this week. And KJ Wright is going to have a very, very detailed scouting report of Mike Green to bring back to the 49ers.
The guy led college football in sacks. I mean, what else do you need to know? The guy just finds a way with what his body gives him.
Yep.
And so he's really fun to work with. The guy's been in the film room. We watch film before. We want to watch it after practice. He asked me earlier today, what can I get better at? Like, the guy's just a student of the game. And he's a bona fide baller. So I love working with him. He's an awesome kid. And he's going to really work up the draft charts.
17 sacks, led the nation last year from Mike Green. And he's 248 pounds. So this is the lighter, more athletic edge rushing type that has paired well with Nick Bosa in the past. Remember D Ford in 2019? He was 245, maybe 250 pounds, out of Auburn, roared off the edge. The speed rush for the 49ers is, I think, what binded that line together. I know that they have Leonard Floyd now, and Floyd had a fine season. If you take a look at the metrics for the 49ers defensive line, Floyd had 8.5 sacks and a decent pressure rate for San Francisco, but he's more of a cleanup sack guy in that he's not going to win one-on-one as often. He's an effort player. 49ers had a few players with good years, especially good finishes along the defensive line. Aside from Leonard Floyd, obviously Yetur Gross-Matos, he's going to be the Charles Omenihu, Arden Key. He's under contract for 2 years. And Malik Collins on the inside actually ranked number 7 out of all defensive tackles in pass rush win rate. But the depth did not perform well for the 49ers this past year. And it hadn't performed well now for a couple years. I mean, you go back and you look at the 2019 defensive line, and they were so good 1 through 7, 1 through 8. Now, at the peak of performance in 2024, the 49ers were good 1 through 3 or 1 through 4. And the good news is that those top 4 guys, they're all under contract for the 2025 season. They signed a bunch of guys to 2-year deals before the 2024 offseason. So the 49ers did plan to really allow some of these players to grow into their roles, and I think that with Yetur Gross-Matos, with Malik Collins, they're happy, but they're not happy with positions 5 through 8, 5 through 9 on this defensive line. And that's where you turn to the draft. I think that, you look at somebody like Mason Graham out of Michigan, that's a premium defensive tackle. That's somebody who probably is going to go in the top 10. 49ers don't pick until number 11. I would not put it past them to go after somebody like Mason Graham. That might require a trade up to like number 7. That may be all the capital that the 49ers have, but I think they need an impact defensive tackle, because when you talk about this defense losing some steam since 2019, Saleh had everybody, right, in 2019 when they peaked. They had DJ Jones as like D lineman number 6 or number 7. They still had DeForest Buckner. They still had Eric Armstead. All those guys are gone now. DJ Jones, by the way, is going to be a free agent. So maybe we see a reunification there. Maybe Solomon Thomas comes back to the 49ers as a good rotational piece. He followed Saleh to New York. Same thing with Javon Kinlaw. He followed Robert Saleh to New York. So maybe the 49ers bolster defensive tackle that way, but I think that when you look at what they've lost since 2019, it's been mainly at that defensive tackle spot. Even when they had the number 1 defense in all of football, and that was with D'Amico Ryans as the defensive coordinator, they were precariously thin at defensive tackle. They only got 2 or 3 sacks all season from their defensive tackles combined in that 2022 season. So, and then the talent drain has just continued. Obviously, Eric Armstead was replaced with Malik Collins, and Collins has been that number 7 defensive tackle pass rush win rate guy. You love that, but they need more at defensive tackle. And that's why I talk about Mason Graham out of Michigan. But is it possible that they go for an edge rusher? That's, we watch KJ Wright coach Mike Green, and we see Mike Green dominate people. 17 sacks for Marshall last season, and I just, people are going to say his arms are going to be a little bit short. Obviously dominated Josh Connerly, the projected first-round draft pick out of Oregon, on the leveling play that we saw during the Senior Bowl practices. I care more about results than strict measurables, and I think that Mike Green delivered results in college. He's delivering results going up against guys who are projected to be first-round draft picks. As KJ Wright said, you can't fake your way through those 17 sacks. It would not shock me if the 49ers came out of this draft with multiple defensive linemen picked. Everybody's going to be hammering home, hey, they have to pick offensive linemen, but the 49ers are going to go with where they can spot the most value. And there is a surplus now, it seems, of defensive linemen available relative to offensive linemen available, just because of how the development of the game has gone at the lower levels. And, this started about 10 or 15 years ago. You had maybe even a little bit more than that, but you had a lot of skill position weapons at the high school level flip to defensive line, become edge rushers to take advantage of that athleticism that they had to really constrict the pocket and win the game at ground zero, point blank, right at that defensive line. And the downstream effects of that have been this surplus in D-line talent. And if you've seen a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who a couple years ago went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Chiefs with an older defensive line. Hassan Reddick, Javon Hargrave, the 49er, was on that defensive line. They have completely rebuilt that line, and now they're back at the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. They've drafted Jalen Carter. Nolan Smith is on that D-line. A lot of young names. Like, the average age was like almost 30 a couple years ago for the Eagles. Now the average age is closer to 25, maybe even a little bit underneath that. So the 49ers need to rebuild their D-line in the same way. Howie Roseman got it done very quickly in Philadelphia. John Lynch needs to get it done just as quickly in San Francisco. They're still going to run the wide nine. Saleh took the wide nine with him to the Jets, and it worked there. They had top 5 defenses for that New York Jets team. They're still going to run the wide nine, but for the wide nine, you've got to have Ferraris across the front. Nick Bosa, he's a Ferrari. Maybe the 49ers can add a Mike Green. That'd be a Ferrari to add to the line. Maybe they could add a Mason Graham. Maybe they can sign a DJ Jones. Maybe they can even sign a Hassan Reddick, who's going to be a free agent. Although I think that'd be going in the wrong direction. I think they want young, durable talent with a lot of future upside. Hassan Reddick, after the holdout last year, only had 1 sack. But that is how you rebuild the defensive line if you're the 49ers. You dip into the talent pool of this draft class. It might be the most deep class of defensive tackles, and we're starting with Mason Graham on that front, that we've seen in a long time. So it wouldn't shock me if the 49ers went that direction. Wouldn't shock me if they also tried to load up on those edge rushers with Mike Green. Starting with Mike Green, moving on to some other edge rushers in the NFL draft. That's what Saleh's going to need. I think that's what he's going to talk about with Chris Kraseric, and that's what San Francisco needs at the bedrock of this defense to bring this back to the glory days of 2019. It's tapered off since then, and last year was bad for the 49ers. They dropped all the way to the number 26 defense, number 29 against the run. They've had to fire 2 straight defensive coordinators. Steve Wilks just signed with the Jets, actually, under Aaron Glenn. Glenn, defensive-minded head coach from the Lions. So I think Wilks is going to fit with the Jets better. He didn't fit with the 49ers. That was a performance regression. They went from number 1 to number 10 overall, from number 2 to number 26 against the run. And then this past season, the 49ers tumbled even further from number 10 to number 26 overall. Wasn't good enough. That's why Saleh's back, but that's why they have to invest in this defensive line. It has to be the engine of the team. Probably the last big video we'll do here from Paris. You can take a look at the view of the whole city from Mount Mart, right under the Sacré-Cœur Cathedral. You can see all the way back to the city.
That was Paris. Now I'm back in the studio. There's Lombardi herself. The Paris Metro. It was cool. This one's station, so many steps to get up. It was right by the viewpoint that we went to. And of course, we can finish with the Eiffel Tower, the Arc, and after one more shot of the Eiffel Tower, the steak frite sandwich. This was an elite sandwich. This was insane. I could put, if you want the location of that in Paris, let me know. Then I'll type it into the description or the comment section. It was a social media recommendation, I have to say. And we went and we bit into that, and it was like life-changing. Simple, but they had this like garlic sauce with the French fries and the steak. And you know it's real when you go up there and you ask them for the sandwich, and then they ask you, how do you want it cooked? It wasn't like a sandwich shop where they just have one meat fits all kind of thing. This was, okay, medium rare. Let's go for the steak frite sandwich. It was awesome. Good times over in Paris. Was able to talk about the 49ers defensive line. I talked about the O-line there as well. But Mike Green, let's talk about him. The edge rusher, and we go to the roster here. Edge rusher is a position that I also think was a little misunderstood last season for the 49ers. because the metrics, they're the metrics of the steak frites sandwich. But the metrics of actual edge rusher, as you can see here, are not great. I mean, there's a lot of red on here. But I think that Leonard Floyd is better than his grade just because he's a player. He's just a hustle guy. He's not going to win a whole lot, but he's going to rack up the sacks. He had 8.5 of them last year. He's a guy you want on your football team. I just don't think that you want him to be your solid number 2. Like, you really, really have to find a true bookend to Bosa. Like, if you want the Eagles have been a great example. They have built a line that is ambidextrous, that is young, that is dominant again, that is moving the needle for that football team. They're going to be playing in the Super Bowl in just over a week. I think Philadelphia has a good blueprint, and the 49ers have the blueprint too. They just have to execute it. If Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos can be your 3 and 4 defensive ends, you are cooking with absolute gas if you're the 49ers. Yetur also was better than this because he was hurt for most of the year. He ended up being the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. If San Francisco can go and pick up somebody like Mike Green and develop Mike Green, who, you know, we just saw how he just owned Josh Carnerly at the Senior Bowl practices this week. And he can enter that rotation with Bosa, with Gross-Matos, and with Leonard Floyd. My goodness. A 17 sack guy last season in college, that's something that could take the 49ers edge rushing back to maybe not its very height in 2019, but definitely the 2021 or even 2022 levels. Okay. So I think you have to look at defensive end and defensive tackle separately. So much of what I wrote about in the article about the defensive tackle position involved the financial management of the position, but we can talk about Mason Graham. We should also talk about Javon Hargrave. They're going to try to get him back at a cheap rate. Will it work? I'm not sure, but that's something that's in the plans for the 49ers. They just couldn't afford him at $20+ million per year, especially after the injuries of the 2024 season. But as you can see, Hargrave is a good pass rusher. Even in the very limited time that we saw this year, they need good pass rushers. One of the things that was exciting for the 49ers this last year was that Malik Collins finished number 7, and I showed that in the video in the pass rush win rate. And that's great, but you need more. You need to layer these defensive linemen. You need to stack the talent up front. That's the only way that you do this and get the results that the 49ers had in 2019, in 2021, in 2022. It is Talanoa Hufanga's birthday today. So as we slide here, here's the defensive line. A lot of guys under contract, by the way, but I think that the 49ers can really improve as we're talking about the roster projection and how to build this team. So I've addressed center. You know, if we want to have fun with this, if we want to, here, I got to get this up on the screen for you guys. I've addressed center. We want to have fun with this. We can put Gray Zabel into the roster. I'm going to erase this a little bit later, but those of you who are following along on the depth chart, you might get a kick out of this. Is Gray Zabel going to start right away for the 49ers at center? No, I don't think so. There is a world, though, in which Zabel works behind the Jake Brendel. There's also a world in which the 49ers sign Drew Dalman because a veteran is somebody who's a much more safe bet at the center position. But I'm still going to add Drew Dalman instead. Let's put Drew Dalman here instead of Jake Brendel. That would mean Brendel's likely gone. Maybe Hennessy, who backed up Dalman in the past, stays on the team. Dalman at center, that fits. Am I putting T. Higgins in at the receiver position? No. I'm going to keep Debo Samuel. I'm going to keep things as is at that spot. I'm going to move down to defensive tackle. I think somebody like DJ Jones, 49ers can bring him back. Let's put DJ Jones in there instead of Jordan Elliott. Do you draft a Mason Graham? That's going to be tough, especially if you have other names like Mike Green on the board. Okay, fine. Mike Green. 49ers add Mike Green to this team. This is where he would fit. You'd have Green next to Bosa. You'd have Floyd and Gross-Matos on the other side. Boom. DJ Jones on the interior next to Malik Collins. Same Malik Collins, who ranked number 7 in pass rush win rate. You've got yourself a defensive line and a football team. See, these aren't massive changes or massive improvements that the 49ers have to make, but it would make them significantly better. Then, and I better undo all these changes because they actually have not happened in reality, but that's just what they would look like. Then you'd have to move down to where there are the most vacancies on the roster. This is linebacker and cornerback. Linebacker, you're going to have to sign guys. There's no way around it. Corner, you're going to have to sign guys. It can't just be rookies for the 49ers. We can start with linebacker because this is where the 49ers are very, very clearly already interested in adding players. We talked about Jamie and Sherwood yesterday. He was with the Jets. The chance that Jamie and Sherwood goes to the Falcons. I think that the staff of the Jets, the former staff of the Jets, you're looking at Jeff Ulbrich, you're looking at Robert Saleh. They might fight for Jamie and Sherwood. I think that a 49ers linebacker core of Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and Jamie and Sherwood would be lethal if you get all three of those guys. Is that going to be possible? I don't know. I don't know what Greenlaw's going rate is going to be. There seems to be a lot of disagreement about that. I do know the 49ers want him back, but at what cost? Even if you do pick up Sherwood, that doesn't fill out the linebacker room because you only have 3 players under contract there so far. Saleh has valued the linebacker position more maybe than any other defensive coordinator in football. With the Jets, he had C.J. Mosley. With the 49ers, well, he was in Mobile. Robert Saleh was in 2019, and they got Dre Greenlaw out of that draft class. It is fundamentally important to what the 49ers do. It's fundamentally important to the run defense, which has sagged lately. Double down on linebacker. Make sure that the intermediaries between the defensive line and the defensive backfield are in place to deliver a good season. And I think free agency is the way that you do that if you're the 49ers. And that includes Dre Greenlaw, and that may include Jamie and Sherwood. Then we move on to the safety position. And at safety, and hey, even cornerback. Why don't we talk about cornerback and safety and the entire defensive backfield in one fell swoop? There's a lot of opening right here, right? You could see a lot of blank spaces that the 49ers need to fill. Today's Talanoa Hufanga's birthday, by the way. He's 25 years old. How are the 49ers going to build? Is it going to include Talanoa Hufanga? Can we recognize that this safety position was an issue last year? Malik Mustafa was awesome as a rookie. I get it. Jair Brown wasn't great in his second season. Talanoa Hufanga was not available for much of the year. I think that Hufanga can fit into the 49ers plan for sure. But just like Dre Greenlaw, what's the price going to be? Where's the health? Where's the durability at? All things that you have to consider. And then even if you do finish that consideration with the decision to re-sign Talanoa Hufanga at an affordable rate, how else do you spruce up the room? Because I think you need more. I think you need a contingency plan for Jair Brown, who missed a lot of tackles last year. So when we look at available safeties on the market, somebody like Javon Holland could be a middle to upper tier signing, formerly of the Miami Dolphins. Justin Reed's going to be out there. Now, Reed, he can give you some help on kick return and special teams as well. The former Stanford product. He's a Chiefs safety, so you're going to get to see him in the Super Bowl just over a week from now. But the top of the safety market is going to command well over $10 million. I remember when Jimmy Ward re-signed with the 49ers a few years ago. That was a deal worth $10 million a year. And that was a few years ago. The cap has inflated since then. You might have to pay. You might have to pay to get back to the level that you need to be at the safety position. I don't know how much Saleh is going to emphasize it. I know they're extremely excited about Mustafa, and maybe they're still excited about Brown. Maybe they think that things will turn around. Maybe they think that the linebacker position is going to be the key to everything on defense because it struggled this past year. It's possible that those struggles have extended elsewhere. Either way, they have to find a way to improve at safety. They still have at least one spot to fill there. And then they've got these spots at the cornerback position. You look at Paulson at Debo, he's going to be a free agent. DJ Reed is going to be a free agent. I think the 49ers will look to draft somebody at cornerback. It's unlikely that Charvarius Ward is going to be back, but they've got a lot of work to do. Lenore, Renardo Green, Darrell Luter Jr. Those are your 3 corners that are projected to make the 53-man roster right now. The top 2 are really solid names. The third is an unproven asset in Darrell Luter Jr. And you cannot enter a season skating on such thin ice at the cornerback position. So as you watch the Senior Bowl, as you watch this entire offseason, those are the positions that you really need to focus on, like positions where they need to add en masse. Cornerback, safety, I'll include safety in there. We'll just say defensive back. Linebacker, absolutely. That's why we've heard of Jamian Sherwin being linked to the 49ers. I think it's an obvious one. That's why everybody's talking so much about Dre Greenlaw, and then at safety, why everybody's talking about Talanoa Hufanga. And then defensive line, it has to get better. I mean, I don't spend hours. Like, I woke up in Paris at like 4 a.m. to finish writing this article the other day. I don't spend hours doing this just because I'm joking about the defensive line. No, the defensive line has some nice pieces under 2-year contracts if you're the 49ers, but needs more. And the defensive line is only going to be a strength in numbers kind of thing. That's how the 49ers operate. That's how football works. They have to bolster this unit. And there are potential options that we can watch today during the Senior Bowl, and Mike Green at the edge, or at defensive tackle. I'm only listing the very top name in Mason Graham, but we can also go to free agency and talk about DJ Jones and players of the 49ers already familiar with, Kinlaw, DJ Jones, Solomon Thomas. I'm not talking only about ceiling. I'm talking about raising the floor of a defensive line that really struggled. So every single level of this defense is going to need some work if you're the 49ers. And I think that the fact they finished number 26 overall last year, number 29 against the run, corroborates they're going to need some real work on the defensive side of the ball. Then when we come on offense, right, go to this offensive side. This is where we started talking about building the framework around Brock Purdy. I think that center is the one area where you can get the best bang for your buck as far as improvement goes. Brendel struggled last year. Brendel's been dealing with knee tendonitis. The offensive line on the interior struggled in pass protection. Colton McKivitz is not the big problem people are making him out to be. It is the interior, especially center and left guard, where you can get better in front of Brock Purdy, move things forward for next season. Well, that's where we start talking about Gray Zabel. We'll watch him in the Senior Bowl. That's when we start talking about Drew Dalman. That's going to be, I mean, I wrote about Drew Dalman 4 years ago. Maybe I'll be writing about Drew Dalman moving forward. That is how you can impact your team the most, I think, is through that center position. Aaron Banks probably not going to be back next year. So who plays next to Aaron Banks? The center. Just like Dominic Pooney raised the profile of Colton McKivitz, right guard helping right tackle, center can help that left guard position, whoever fills it this next season. One name that I really, really would like to see the 49ers re-sign is Ben Bartch. Take a look at this. When I wrote about the offensive line and we look at the performances from last year, the best one, Ben Bartch, down at the bottom. How about that? 93 pass block percentile, 68 run block percentile. He's going to be a free agent, though. Didn't play a lot of snaps before the high ankle sprain. So there may be a chance that San Francisco gets him back at a relative discount, something to absolutely look forward to. Bartch, I think, could be a player. So he dislocated his knee for Jacksonville and wasn't quite himself, and the 49ers poached him off the practice squad, and he was just a reserve in 2023. He has re-strengthened, and he has learned the system, and Bartch is a talented guy that could be a big-time asset for San Francisco as they look to replenish the line. But anyway, I'll go back to where I started, and we talked about T. Higgins at the top of the show. The offensive line was not the 49ers' biggest issue on offense this past season. It was the lack of separation. Kyle Shanahan's play calling was not good, and I don't think it was helped by the lack of separation. And then, obviously, it did not help the lack of separation either. You've got to have all the components firing if you're going to be an elite offense like the 49ers were in that 2023 season. And the lack of separation, where they literally, the rank was dead last in that regard, that issue should be ameliorated most by returns from injury. We talk about Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey, but the reason that people are going to be floating around big-time receiver names for the 49ers is because it was such a big problem. So that's why T. Higgins is somebody that people are talking about this week. My take, and if you disagree with me, go ahead and put it into the comment section and we could talk about it. My take is that they're on the right track with Ricky Pearsall. Brandon Ayuk should come back. He's going to need it. You're paying him $30 million a year. You just dealt out that contract last offseason. You need him to come back strong. I think that he's going to come back strong. McCaffrey's going to come back strong. Somebody like Isaac Guerrero can really help the offensive backfield. Pearsall, second year, you set Debo Samuel up for a much better season. I don't think that the need, if you're the San Francisco 49ers, for another wideout is acute, especially given the fact that Ricky Pearsall is now a trusted member of the mix. That being said, people are going to keep on talking about it. You just have to decide where to most wisely allocate your resources if you are the 49ers. I'm going to wisely allocate my resources right now and move this to a 49ers Q&A. Let's go. Big Saturday morning show. Nothing wrong with that, right? Got quite a few of you watching. That's all great news. I love doing these shows. They're a lot of fun. Let's move to the Q&A and then move on with our days. Wading through some of your questions. Somebody's asking me, do I think the 49ers see interior D-line as an issue? I would hope so. I mean, I just talked about it for about 30 minutes. Here's a good comment talking about the receiver. Speed is not equal to separation. No, it's not just like pure speed. It's route running. It's also play calling, right? Like everything ties together. That's the beauty of this sport, is that you can't just point at one variable to fix any individual problem. You have to look at the big picture in this sport, which I think makes it a really, really rewarding sport to cover, but it's also maddening because social media is constantly trying to simplify things. And that's just not the case. This is pretty cool. Thanks for the intensive deep dive into this team's needs for the upcoming 2025 season as I drive to Oregon. I love that. Heading up to Oregon, listening to the podcast or watching. Maybe don't watch so you could keep your eyes on the road. But hopefully the audio of this with this nice new mic, it's not new anymore. It's a few months old, but hopefully that's doing the trick for you. Love it. Do I think the 49ers will double dip at cornerback in the draft? I have no idea, man. This is what I say about the draft. Like, if somebody asks me, who are they going to pick at number 11? It's like, would you know what play the 49ers are going to run on the 11th play of a game 3 months from now? No, we won't know. Like, the draft is something that's going to be a living, breathing thing. Strategy is determined on the fly. You can't pre-chart it. The second that you start pre-charting the draft, especially at this kind of level, is the second that your roster is going to really, really suffer. Lack of separation was partially due to predictable play calling. Yep. I mean, I blame both sides of this, right? I recognize that it is a complicated situation. I think that you have a negative domino effect when somebody like Christian McCaffrey goes down and he makes play calling a lot easier for Kyle Shanahan. And then Debo Samuel goes down. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk goes down. It is a cascading effect. It's harder to call plays in those situations. So you lose the on-field explosiveness and ability that creates separation. But then you also hurt the confidence of the play calling operation, starting with Kyle Shanahan, and you get the result that the 49ers had this last year, which was number 32 in separation at the time of catch or incompletion. Michael asks, will I grow my beard back? Should I grow my beard back? Thumbs up or thumbs down in the comment section. If you want me to, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. We'll let the crowd decide. They're playing a tornado siren here. It's like they're testing it, though. It's noon right now, so that's where that's coming from. You probably can't hear it because the mic does such a good job blocking everything out. There it is. Do you hear it? This is a good one. Kyle values Swiss Army knife players, but it only works when there are multiple of those players available, like CMC and Debo on the field at the same time. Yes. When there's only one there, then it really strains the goals of the offense as a whole. This show is brought to you by Public Rec. Public Rec, I'm actually wearing their pants right now. You can't see because the camera obviously is only focused up here, but they call them the Game Changer. The Game Changer pants. They could be worn in a formal occasion, but they also kind of feel like sweatpants. I actually just went to the coffee shop before this show, did some research, and was wearing my Public Rec pants. So for a limited time, our listeners can get 20% off their entire order with the code Lombardi at publicrec.com. That's 20% off when you use the promo code Lombardi at publicrec.com. Usually when you order comfortable pants, you only get to pick from small, medium, large, and extra large sizes. But with Public Rec pants, you get to select the exact width and length you need. Whether you're a 30 by 30 or a 44 by 36, you can find your perfect fitting pants. They come in so many unique colors, from navy, dark olive, and stone gray. I have the dark olives on. You're sure to find the right color for you. Make your New Year's resolution a comfortable one. No more pants that pinch, tug, or annoy. For a limited time, you can get 20% off at Public Rec by using the code Lombardi at checkout. Just head to publicrec.com, use the code Lombardi, and you're all set. Oh, and when they ask you how you found them, be sure to mention our show. It really helps us out. Find your perfect fit and never compromise on comfort again. Public Rec, where comfort rules. That's a good slogan, where comfort rules. Public Rec really, really does a nice job. Anyway, this was our 49ers roster projection. I trust that you guys enjoyed it. We went through all the good questions. Not all of them. I know a lot of you answered the questions, but I've been online for over an hour at this point, so maybe I answer one or two more, and then we can call it a show. Marcellus always has really good comments. Also, consider the defenses were squatting on routes mostly because they didn't fear the run game or the setup failed earlier. A major part of Kyle's genius is using the defense's rules against them. Yes, the 49ers ranked number 20 in first down run efficiency. They ranked number 1 the year before. So you can't set things up if you're not as efficient on the ground, right? That's a big, big thing. And no Christian McCaffrey, no Elijah Mitchell, Isaac Guerrero hurt, Jordan Mason got hurt. That all had a cascading effect on the 49ers this year. So we can, oh, look, I misspelled 49ers Q&A down at the bottom. I got to fix that. The prospect to watch in the Senior Bowl, which is starting in a bit, is Mike Green. Here, 49ers Q&A, spelled correctly. It was almost like I was still in France or something. I feel like The French would spell 49ers Q&A with an E instead of an S at the end. Anyway, that's it. Big time roster projection. We went through all the free agents, draftees. Go enjoy the Senior Bowl. Watch some prospects. Watch KJ Wright. We'll talk to you all very soon.